we did what you could. Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. We have Quinny sporting the Acsom merch. We'll get to the bottom of that one in just a moment or two. I'm Paul John Dykes, and hopefully we'll be met also and joined also by Kevin Graham. He should be on the show this afternoon. And obviously the big talking points around yesterday's game, the performance, and what we have learned from that, if anything. Also quite a bit of off the field stuff to discuss as well. I know that Chris, Liam and Kevin touched on that. Big kudos to, not Kevin, sorry, Sean. Big kudos to Sean, because as soon as Jota got injured the other week, he called it. He actually called the injury, which is mightily impressive. So quite a sad one. But that starts us off with a point. We're going into this game yesterday, Quinny, and I was delighted to enjoy the game with yourself at Barrazat Design in the heart of Glasgow's East End. And we've gone in under strength. Now, I'm not making excuses, but 4 big players, and we'll obviously be talking about how that affects us. Schmeichel obviously has been out for a while now. Alistair Johnson missed out, Kuhn and Jota leaving us short on the wings. But it allows us to open up the discussion with Sinisalo, who has come in, not too much of a fanfare, and he's performed pretty well. But I thought he was excellent yesterday. I watched the game back this morning because I think you get caught up in emotion at times, and your voice might also show that you were very vocal during the game. Watched it back this morning. Sinisalo was key to yesterday, us taking anything from the game.
I totally agree. And I was a wee bit late in joining this because I was actually just finishing recording my breakdown of it. And to be quite honest with you, I totally overlooked the Schmeichel Sinisalo kind of element of it. I think Sinisalo, was very good in the game, made some great saves, and it's very, like, we were kind of talking about this. I can't remember when, but we were chatting about like the squad and the planning and all that kind of stuff. And Sinisalo's had a very meaningful spell in the team now, and he personally would maybe want another clean sheet or two, but I think from everyone that's seen him, you would definitely give him like proper pass marks. Like, he looks the part. He looks like a great prospect, and if he's continuing next season at the club, that whole Jedi Padawan thing he's got with Kasper Schmeichel, then it looks like a great get by the club in the summer.
I like that. Particularly yesterday with May the 4th be with you and all that stuff. That was brilliantly dropped in there. Now, the reason Quinny's wearing what I actually call a Rennie hat, because I'm showing my age and my musical influences. It was at one point a fishing hat. It's now called a sun hat. You see them at the festivals, and they have made their way into the Scottish football stadiums. And that was the last of them. We had a big batch, and if you were at Badge yesterday, you might have gone home with a wee Acsom sun hat, 3 different designs, all sold out, and we're making space for our new merch coming in. So brilliant to see Quinny and his pals. But we'll take a wee diversion for a moment, Quinny, because you're sitting with a very interesting top. If you wear blue on this show, you will get called out by somebody. But there's a very interesting top, and it was a pal of yours who brought it up for you yesterday, and he came to the game, didn't he? Watched the game with you.
Yeah, so like I've been at a few of the events before, obviously, for Champions League games and 1 or 2 other things. So the pal coming up, and he was wanting to watch the game with us, and it can be a nightmare finding a place to go and watch the game. So as soon as he said he was coming up, the first thing I thought of was heading down to your place. So it's great to see him coming over from Australia, and he's like a really big football fan. It was great to have him over for the derby and all the rest. So obviously couldn't go to have it for a ticket or anything like that. And he had a great time. He really enjoyed it. And he was over from Australia, but he's been kind of globetrotting, as it were. And when he was in Japan, he picked us up some bits and bobs. So got a few Japan goodies out yesterday, which was great crack. Great gifts, of course. Very thankful to Doge Sports if he's out there, Sam. Thanks very much. And he had a great time. It was a great venue, and it was very well attended as well by the good and the great of the Celtic community. It felt like as well, with a few familiar faces, and got a few fist bumps and a few hi-as from everyone out there. So it was brilliant.
It was a good day, and just as we bring in Kevin Graham, and his T-shirt will link us into another point of discussion today, I'm pretty sure, with regards to the off the field stuff when it comes to Celtic and what we face every time we go to Ibrox. But yeah, we were just talking there, Kev. Welcome to the show, mate. Great to see you. And we're talking about almost a under the radar introduction to the team of Sinisalo. Biggest test came yesterday. Came through it with flying colours, didn't he? Played really well. Some really important saves.
He did play really well. And you need your keeper to stand up at Ibrox, no matter how bad you think the Rangers team is, because they're always going to have chances, especially at home. and he made a couple of good saves. He seems fine. He doesn't seem to like the ball at his feet as much as what Schmeichel does. But again, that's just different type of goalkeepers. But I feel comfortable enough with him in goals, and I think you can actually see in the small sample size, to quote Alan Morrison, why we actually went for him. Truthfully, so that's he's a decent understudy to Casper, and he's probably got another year to learn under Schmeichel before he becomes our number one goalie.
There was one thing that he did. It was the old, probably Peter Schmeichel was the first guy. I know that Boric was very good at it, where they'd completely spread the body when they come out for the ball. And you've seen Kasper Schmeichel doing it all season. And I don't know if Sinisalo was doing this pre-Celtic, but he'd done that a few times yesterday to good effect. And I think he is. He's only going to learn from somebody like Kasper Schmeichel, over 100 international caps, winning titles in England and coming up to Scotland and doing the same. A huge inspiration for any younger goalie coming through. So I think we've done really well there. And we're going to be focusing mainly on the action to start off with, because we're now looking at this, and Quinny and I spoke about it at half-time down at Barra's Art and Design, but we're in the yard. The sun came and went, it was in and it was off, and all the rest of it. Great atmosphere, absolutely brilliant atmosphere. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And I hope you enjoy your Acsom sun hats. If you left with one of them as well. Free pies at half-time as well. I've not managed to indulge myself yet, because when you get to my age, you just need to look at a pie and you put on £4. So I've not done the pies yet, but they smell amazing. And we were talking about the game. And basically, straight off the bat, I'm watching it, I'm thinking, we're not going to repeat some of the mistakes that we've already made this season against Rangers. Because straight off the bat, first thing they did is they played a long ball into our left defensive channel, Quinny. That was a first action that Rangers had yesterday. And then, of course, they hit the bar. They hit the bar, and you're thinking to yourself straight away, right, they're going to do what they have done against us, and we need to combat that. Overall, though, I mean, yesterday I put a tweet out saying that I thought it was a kind of fair result. Having watched it back, Quinny, I think the first half was pretty equal in terms of possession, them creating some really good chances, probably the better chances, other than obviously he does, probably the better chances at a half. But the second half belonged to us. I've watched that back, and the second half was all Celtic. A wee bit like the last game at Celtic Park. Is that how you viewed it yourself, looking back on it, Quinny?
Yeah, I think like the substitutions in the second half definitely gave us a bit more kind of parity physically with Rangers. I did feel that, in the first half, there wasn't much in it, but it felt like they were just, a wee bit more present in the game. Is the way I kind of stop saying it. You can kind of Raskin, Diamande, Hefty, Cherny, you kind of always knew where they were in the game, and they were always, if they were on the ball, making their presence felt in some way, shape or form. And we didn't really have as many players doing that for one reason or another. And I think rewatching it back myself this morning, I think the first half was really the story of Adam Ida in terms of opportunities and sliding door moments and that sort of thing. And although it was tight, on another day, it very easily, we could easily have. We've had derby matches like that where maybe they do have a good volume of chances and all the rest of it, but we just take ours, and that's the difference, or that has been the difference in the past. And the first half, that wasn't the case.
The other thing that really annoyed me, and we spoke about it at half time, we talked about the fact that, we really needed to, particularly in the midfield, I feel, take ownership a wee bit more, Quinny. I mean, we can go old school and say, you need somebody to smash them. You need to do the Barry Robson against Christian Daly and all that kind of stuff. And actually, I'll come back to that, because I only think we've got one midfielder who is capable physically at the moment of doing that, and he's not actually doing it well enough, in my view. You cannot be in a situation, right, particularly after the last game, where the opening goal scored by a header by one of the smallest players on the park. And by the way, I don't like Raskin. I don't like the way he goes about it and all that kind of stuff. But I can concede that he's a decent footballer. He obviously is. He's got some real quality, right? I just don't like the way he goes about it and trying to noise up Callum McGregor and all this kind of stuff, right? But he wins a header. He wins again. He wins another header in the Celtic box. You think, have we not learned our lessons? And, you look at that, Kevin, and that's frustrating. I know that, obviously they had the goal chopped off and all that kind of stuff. But you look at that and think, we need to be better there. We absolutely need to be better. And I've watched it back, and I can only point my finger at Scales. I'm always looking at, it's a collective responsibility, but there's certain things players can do better, and Scales has to be stronger. I mean, in the end, he's ending up just trying to grab his jersey and all that, Kev. He needs to be better and much, much stronger in a situation like that.
He does, and maybe because you and Quinny have watched it back, you maybe got a better idea than me. But I think we got done twice with the same block that gave him the space. And it's not that Raskin's out jumping him, it's what Rangers are doing at that corner kick is blocking Scales going with him. And I think it happened with Balogun as well. It's the same block. And I think, well, obviously Big Schlupp fell asleep at Celtic Park for that. But when you saw it, it is like the same block that they actually do. And we've got to get smarter on that. You can't let the smallest guy in the park get away. And he had another header as well, where he got away and Scales was actually blocked again. And again, that's just football intelligence. You've got to actually wise up. This is what they're going to do. And we just seem to have a problem marking set plays. They didn't cut us open at any point apart from the goal, and it was a really good goal. I must admit that actually it was a well-worked goal with them. But any time they got a long throw-in or any chance to punt the ball into the box, I was worried. I was really worried because we just couldn't really handle that whatsoever. As you say, we've got to be better. I think Scales has got to be better at their goal as well. I think he was a bit weak defensively as well. But other than that, I think the first half at Celtic Park and the 3-0 game at Ibrox previously, I think we handled our press really well yesterday. I think we played through it quite easily at times, but in the final third we just lacked that complete and utter quality. And what really was overall a poor game of football. There wasn't a lot of quality on show yesterday. That was it had a feeling when you got to about 70 minutes, it had dead rubber. Like there was no edge, there was nothing there. No matter what Ian Crocker was trying to actually talk up, he was trying to talk up a Peely bin fire.
You know,
it was. I felt like going to him, just admit it. This game is poor. If it was down the public park, you would carry on walking your dog. You wouldn't actually stop to watch this because it's like two hungover teams that are going. We're just ticking this off, boys, ain't we?
An interesting point you make there, though, Kev, in terms of dealing with what Rangers have done well against Celtic this season. If we're sitting here and Adam Eder scores that first one-on-one, which obviously the fact he misses it leads directly to the Rangers goal, or in the last minute, and we'll come down to the ifs, whats and buts and maybes with Maeda, if one of those go in, are we sitting here going, we've sussed it? Are we doing that, Quinny? Are we that fickle? Because we're analysing the game knowing it's a 1-1 draw. But I tend to agree with Kev. I don't feel, watching it back, I don't feel as though they had us sussed during yesterday's game.
No, again, it does feel quite similar to some of the other ones where it was like we could have just gave a bit more, and that wasn't like we were so off the pace or they had some sort of master move that was undoing us every time.
We seemed to meander, Quinny. We just meandered, and once we broke the press, we hoped something would happen. And it was either that we lack of quality, like Eder's pass to Forrest. Things like that happened all during the game. The ball seemed to hold up. It wasn't hanging enough. And it just seemed like once we broke the press, it was as if we were going, something will happen. Instead of trying to make it to happen. That was me. Sorry, Quinny. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's all... The thing with that as well, talking about, and we'll get on to Eder, this isn't an opportunity for us to have a dig at Liam Scales. I'm a massive Liam Scales fan. I love the journey that he's on with Celtic, and actually he's playing on merit at the moment because had I seen that team line yesterday and Nawrocki or Trusty were in the team, I wouldn't have been happy with that. I'm going to be brutal about it. Scales for me was the correct pick, but it has to be stronger. Kev, maybe a bit smarter as a unit, actually, you're right. Because remember, we picked out the Schlupp. Schlupp had his foot stood on, didn't he? And then he was moaning to the ref before you know it, he's lost a yard. So yeah, we need to be a bit smarter in that situation, and Scales must be stronger at the goal as well, Quinny. I mean, you're thinking to yourself, there's certain players in this team at the moment, and I would say at this moment in time, there are probably 4, but mainly 3 players that are on a short leash with quite a few fans watching the game, right? And it's Eder, Scales, Greg Taylor, and maybe even Engels. I've seen a lot of criticism last night about Engels' performance. So naturally, Quinny, being an Engels fan, I'm watching that with a really laser focus to see, was he really that bad? And I'm sure we'll come back to that as well. But Scalesy, it's one of the ones where you're the centre. You've just got to win that ball in the box. We criticised Kuhn for not winning the ball against St Johnstone to put the ball in the net when it was a 60-40. The Scales thing's a 50-50, and he's kind of out-muscled it. He's no strong enough for me, Quinny.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I feel about it. It's more like, like, say Scales has got strength 7 out of 10, Dessers is like 9 out of 10. He's just not strong enough to deal with him. It's not like he's not trying, or he could try harder or whatever. Like, maybe you tackle, maybe you position a little bit better, that sort of thing. But like, he's just been out-muscled by it. And like, I've seen somebody in the chat saying the common denominator in all this stuff is like Scales in terms of their good moments or bad moments. But I think it was more like their right-hand side, our left-hand side, because I was kind of worried about Taylor coming into this game, as much as I'm a Taylor fan and all the rest of it. But Tierney had freedom at the pitch, yesterday. Raskin, whenever he was like bursting forward, it was that side of the pitch. And Scales is like the kind of the headline, the butt of the joke for a lot of it. But I think it was just more like their right-hand side was working pretty well, and our left-hand side, I'd rather slip in there, especially with Ralston, saying just kind of bank that as a 4 a bit better, and just like, be a defence rather than what we're trying to do with Taylor is let him do his thing, obviously, walk around the pitch. Because Tierney, like I say, I just felt he had the freedom of the pitch whenever they got into the final third with him. So
did he. He didn't think he should have been taken off, Quinny, by all accounts. Did you see the reaction?
I could see why he's raging. Honestly, I think if he got the ball 2 or 3 more times, he'd have made something happen, because nobody was getting in his way, really. And like we see with the chances they did get, they were hitting the ball, we were the crossbar with headers and all the rest of it. So the way they play it is just law of averages. So in a couple of balls, it could have been a bit dangerous,
Let's be thankful. Let's be thankful, Quinny, he didn't have a water bottle in his hand, because God knows what might have happened. Right? I bet he's got a sore elbow this morning, though, that's for sure. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. We're talking about the good performance of Sinisalo. We're talking about things we could have done better, and we'll get on to the off-field hate fest that was Ibrox yesterday, and that's the only word I could come up with, because that's exactly what it is, and we need to call it out for what it is as well. But Adam Ida, we've touched on Adam Ida. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong here, but I think that's Adam Ida now. Had 1 start against Rangers and he scored 3 goals. So obviously he came on in the 3 each game last season. He came on in the Scottish Cup final. He scores the 2 goals. He's got another goal yesterday, Kev, but I think he needed it. Honestly, see that first half performance for me, like the one Quinny's already mentioned, the ball to Forrest, the one-on-one, he needs to be decisive. He needs to be clinical. He kind of scaffs it a bit. Second half, he gets his goal. And by the way, what a quality goal that was as well, Kev.
It's his turn. I didn't until I saw it again last night. I didn't realise how good the first touch and the turn actually was. It was instinct. No time to think about it, and we've spoke about this before about Adam Ida, especially the goals against Aston Villa. When he hasn't got time to think, that's when you actually see him, the quality that he's actually got. He got a bit of luck with the deflection. I must admit though, when he was breaking through on goal, him and Suter, it was like watching 2 oil rigs trying to chase each other.
Kev, I honestly, that is just an AI. That's an opportunity. Because I look at Suter and I think to myself, he's like he's like a cart horse, right? And you've got to just leave him for dust. You really do. You've got to leave him for dust. But that was actually quite a good analogy.
And he tries to do the right thing. He tries to lift it over the goalkeeper, which is the thing that you should be actually doing, but he just doesn't catch it right. He never looked. I was never confident that he was going to score when he was actually bursting through. But he took his goal really, really well. And I think after the goal, you saw his hold-up player got better, his link-up player got better. He looked a bit more mobile. It looked like a bit of weight had came off his shoulders. Now, I don't think he was absolutely brilliant. I don't think any one of your players were absolutely brilliant, but he did improve in that second half until he had run his race, and basically we're chucking the last throw at the dice going, right, we need to bring on Johnny Kenny now, because there's no point leaving Ida on because he's run himself into the ground. Maybe that says more about the strength and depth of your squad when you take a couple of players out. But he needed that goal. I'm pleased for him. I'm pleased he got a double celebration as well. I like that. I like the fact that he got a double celebration rather than just one. But I was, after we scored, I don't think we maybe done enough to win it either. I don't think we did. We just lacked that wee bit of quality. But I was pleased for the big fella he scored. But in the first half. In the first half, Adam Ida was poor, like a lot of the players. And I know Kaiser oil tankers can't move. That's why I made it. That's why I made the pun. I know
Absolutely.
oil tankers can't move.
That's exactly it. Yeah. It was neck and neck with the two big oil tankers, right? Jay Conley, Jay Larkin, welcome back to the show. Afternoon to you as well. Glad the drama of that fixture is over, he says, and we can now concentrate on preparing for the cup final. It's changed so much, that fixture, Kev, isn't it, for a travelling fan, the whole experience, you know. I said this, you and I were in the same building on Thursday night. I never saw you, though. We were at St Luke's at a gig, and I was talking to a few Celtic fans in there as well. They were saying, you know, even if you couldn't pay me to go to a game at Ibrox these days, and I can understand why, because you know the whole situation with meeting in a car park early doors to get in a couple of hours before kick-off and all that kind of stuff. It's a nonsense. And then once you're in the stadium, there's no guarantee that you're safe in there either. So yeah, that is, for me, it's damaging, and I don't think it's ever going to recover from it.
It was a bad day overall for Scottish football yesterday.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't really bother about how Scottish football looks to anybody else. But you look at Sky. Sky have forced that game to be moved to a bank holiday weekend. They wanted it on the bank holiday weekend. All Scottish footballers usually go. All Scottish football has its fan culture. All Scottish, because the game, and even though like the Brighton game after it was even just as bad as the Celtic Rangers game, but all Scottish football's got its fan culture. That yesterday, you had a terrible game of football and toxic fan culture beamed out to millions of households over Britain, over Europe, over the world. It's not a good look for Scottish football whatsoever when they're trying to get deals and sponsorship deals and stuff like that. Yesterday was a really, really bad day for those who defend the Scottish game.
Not just the Scottish game, Kev, but those like Acsom who have defended ultra culture for a long time, because you know that it's going to be all just lumped into the same thing. It's that it's, you know, ultras equals bad, even though, and we'll get onto it, the specifics and the intricacies of what we're going to talk about doesn't mean to say that ultra culture is bad. But yesterday, in terms of an advert, absolutely horrific, toxic in actual fact. Adam Ida gets his goal, Quinny, but throughout that second half, watching it back, I'm looking at thinking to myself, you know, Dyson Maeda is the best player in Scotland. It was voted last night, not just Celtic's best player, Scottish football's best player. And I know it was through injuries and all the rest of it, but as the game kind of dragged on, I'm thinking to myself, can we not just put him through the middle? Can we not just try something a little bit different? I mean, he's shown what he can do. He's had a spectacular season, Quinny, and I know quite a bit of that's been out on the left. And I also know that Yang hasn't had much game time since he'd done his elbow and all that kind of stuff, right? But just make the change, because, you know, the big man, he'd done his job for me, Big Ida. And, you know, what's wrong with playing two through the middle as well? We never seem to do anything that's going to cause a bit of chaos. And I think that was one thing that frustrated me yesterday in the second half.
Yeah, we didn't really have too many options to like mix it up with the bench we had available, just with players being out and whatnot. I do think, like, I would agree with Kev. Like, I thought Ida's finish was brilliant. He's moving away from goal, back to goal as well. Great reactions as well, because it starts off like Maeda's trying to cross it, and then it ends up as like a classic Dyson Maeda like assist where it comes off the backside of his leg from a clearance before Ida picks it up, you know. So he's got to really move to that and react to that. So I thought it was a great goal and kind of made up for a little bit of the maybe one of the missed chances or opportunities in the first half. But yeah, with no Kuhn and no Jota, because of Dyson kind of covering two spots, like it really did kind of tie your hands together with what options were available to the manager. But I thought, you know, before the game and like even looking back on it, I thought Forrest would have been a lot better in this game from the bench, you know, because Yang, like, and I know he's only just back from his own injury, like you mentioned, but with Forrest throughout this game, like, he was like a wide midfielder rather than a winger. Like, that Hefty, he never took him on. He never really tried to ask a question of him. And he was just always like good in possession and stuff like Forrest always is, you know. But Yang is like the opposite of that. And, you know, he'll put guys on their back foot. He'll make guys turn and run. And you felt that when he came on. And yeah, so I think like when you have Yang and Forrest is kind of just the first guy that could be like mixed up here, there's not really much room to get Maeda through the middle, because, you know, we're then benching Ida so we're not going to play Forrest, Yang, and Maeda from the start. I think either with the form he's on, and with even like some of the missed chances he had in the first half, he could have passed a bit better as well. His build-up play was pretty minging in stages of this game. He was still the best guy, I think, to start through the middle, given who was available, because Dyson on the left is way better than, like having him on the left and either through the middle for me is way better than having Maeda through the middle with then Forrest and Yang either side of him. Maybe gives you more to do in the second half to mix it up, but I think, with who's fit, we don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah, we've touched on Sinisalo and his good performance and how he's done since he's come in for Schmeichel. I think that when you look at the game and you watch it back, and there was the same old thing. I remember the Ibrox game last time round where I was, looking at that performance, the collective performance really is Scales and Taylor. And I can see why they get a lot of criticism. I really can. And I can see why people say, look, if we want to progress, we need to improve both of those players. But all season, I've also been standing up for Scales. And in more recent times, Taylor also, who's not yet signed a contract. Brendan Rodgers has tried to replace them, Kevin. He's tried to replace the left back twice this season by bringing in Alex Bailly and bringing in Jeffrey Schlupp. He's tried to replace the left side of defence by spending £6 million on Austin Trusty. We know that Gustav Lagerbielke and Nawrocki came before, and whether or not Brendan Rodgers has his fingerprints on those signings, we'll probably never know for sure. I've got my doubts. But Trusty, I think we're all in agreement. Trusty, you've got to give that signing to Brendan Rodgers. And we have tried to replace him, and we've failed, really, because both Trusty and Schlupp are sitting on the bench. And when the team line was read out, they're on the bench because of the merit of the other two guys who have come into the team and they've got the jerseys. But Kev, when I watch a game like that, and it sometimes highlights and shines a light on things that you are unhappy with. Taylor constantly turning back the way, even though it was his ball into Maeda that led to the equalising goal. Scales getting out muscled, and it's something that you think, will that ever change? Will he ever get better? Yet both players have got what it takes, I think, 9 times out of 10 to do really well against domestic opposition. And Scales has done well in Europe. He's had Man of the Match awards in the Champions League, Kev. Is this still the focus of where we need to prioritise the improvement in the summer? Because obviously, a couple of injuries and we're struggling on the wings. We've been running for half a season with at least one striker less than we should, right? Although I want to talk about Johnny Kenny a wee bit. I thought he'd done well when he came on. But Kev, is it the same old story when we're looking at where we can improve? When we watched that game yesterday, you're looking at Scales, you're looking at Taylor, that left side of the park. I mean, you put KT in there, and already it's a completely different landscape.
That was my point I was going to make. We've already improved that left-hand side and maybe improved the left-hand side of defence as well, because Tierney can play left-hand sided centre-half, and he has done. Even though I've noticed Arsenal playing him more as a winger. Now he actually plays further up on the left-hand side of midfield. I've said a month back that once we had signed KT, I think that's the end of the inverted fullback. I don't know. I think we'll see. And you noticed that yesterday, Rodgers called Anthony Ralston over at one point and says to him, stay out wide. Didn't bother going in because they've congested there. Mm-hmm. And as soon as we started doing that, that's when we started playing against the Preds. Yes, of course. Can we say Trusty's failed? Probably no. I'm going to give Trusty the benefit of the doubt here. I think he's paying for that hurt. The lack of effort against St Johnstone. Scales came in, done well, and Rodgers knows we can trust him. But we know Scales' limitations. We do know Scales' limitations, but we play in Scotland. Greg Taylor, I just think it's a lot of time. I think Taylor and Scales were spooked, and I think us as a team are now spooked playing Rangers of the way that they play against us. I think we've got a wee bit of a problem now against them where we can't put ourselves in it, but then saying that we did win the cup final. Doesn't matter what some Celtic fans say. We did win the cup final, lads.
I don't
we have got a trophy to say that we did win the cup final.
Did we win the game? Did we win the game? Of course we did. Aye.
And you can go back. You can go back to any other games. I just think there's a more system problem when we've been facing Rangers this season that we haven't kind of overcome. But even though yesterday, I don't think they troubled us that much. I think we played out it quite well. With regards to strengthening the squad, I think everything's up for grabs, really. If we want to keep on progression in Europe, it's not just the left-hand side. If there's any player comes available, let's go into walk in and improve our first team. Every spot's up for grabs. And some are going to be easier to replace than others. But if we want to move on the way that we want to move on and improve next season in Europe, everybody's spot has to be up for grabs. And we can't rest. And hopefully that's the kind of mantra that the club's got.
I hope so, yeah. And you've always said that, Kevin. I get it, and it keeps everybody really on their toes. Everybody needs to know that their jersey is up for grabs and somebody needs to come in. You've always got to have that standard. You can't let it drop. Loads of conversations happening in the chat, as always, so I'm going to bring some of them into play and we will talk about each of the individual points. And then we'll move on to anything else that we've missed. I'm going to start with you, Daniel. It's always great to see you in the comments. Daniel Farrelly, here you go. And you're on the YouTube. Call out our own vile fan through Acsom. Disgusting behaviour and should be banned from Paradise and every other stadium. Well, absolutely. 100%. You're right. I mean, I did see the fan you're talking about in relation to mocking a tragic event that happened at Ibrox where innocent football fans lost their life. That's disgraceful. And you've got images of them, identify them and ban them. Totally agree with that. And I think that, the big issue around that particular story is that story running and other stories not running, which I also understand. And it shouldn't be about whataboutery. That fan that made those gestures, and there's a wee guy behind him, and I don't know if it had anything in terms of a connection to the person, was mimicking him. I don't know if you saw it, Kevin. The wee boy was mimicking the older fella. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. Absolutely. It's vile. It is. It's horrendous.
It's absolutely vile. And every so often you get younger guys trying to sing the Ibrox disaster song, and luckily enough, they quickly get shut down. Mm-hmm. They absolutely quickly get shut down. But it does look like that's what the boy's doing. It does really look like that's what the guy's doing. If so, his life's in tatters this morning,
Yeah, I did see something. Remember, in relation to that, we talk about, and we're going to talk about the hatefest that was at Ibrox yesterday, and it needs called out. It absolutely needs to be called out, and I think the club need to be very strong in it. But Daniel's right, yeah. Whenever we are in a position where things haven't gone right, or people are behaving in a way that you just think it's vile, it's unacceptable, call that out as well. It will lead us on to the situation, which part of which was mentioned by Brendan Rodgers in his post-match. And it's just typical, Quinny, after the game, and the style of questioning and the agenda of the person doing the interview, talking about Rangers being stronger next season. It's so, talk about tedious and boring trebles. No, I'll tell you what's tedious and boring. That kind of narrative, Quinny, where you've got the Celtic manager standing in front of you and you're asking him about how strong Rangers are going to be next season. He must be tired of listening to it.
Yeah, he had that question in the pre-match as well, and he shut it down. Just like, it's number one thing it does my head in about listening to the press conferences is half the journalists' questions are just like, write me a story, Brendan.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you something, and no matter what you say, I can write about it, kind of thing. There's never, especially the match related, the press conferences especially. They should be like there should be guidelines, something that they have to actually pertain to the match. Like they actually have to involve events in the match, tactics, decisions, or that kind of thing, rather than just what can we write on top of the paper tomorrow.
It's horrendous. It's horrendous, Quinny, because what I've seen in the past, and I'm not saying it's always the case, but what I liked about fan media questions in the past was the fact that we did have a different angle. And I think that because of that, Brendan felt a wee bit more comfortable. Then he started opening up on other things that gave you something to write about anyway, because he felt a wee bit more comfortable and he opened up. Whereas straight off the bat, you're putting him on the back foot. And he's like, look, that's not my concern. My concern's Celtic, like Kev says. Let's look at every individual and see where we can improve. But he did call out, in particular, the missiles being thrown. Now, I was looking at that, and obviously Sinisalo is now the man. We've already praised him for his performance. And there's a moment, I think, there's cups, there's some other plastic objects, probably vapes, but you see the close-up of the Buckfast bottle, the half bottle of bucket, and it's sitting there. And there's so much wrong with this. The actual act itself is appalling. Someone was jailed for throwing a bottle from the club deck, I think it was, from corporate, Kev. He got jailed for it, He hit the physio in the back of the head, split his head open. We've seen the broken glass in Joe Hart's goalmouth. There's the story about a tifo being organised previously at Ibrox, and when they were in organising the tifo, they were hiding baseball bats in bins and all this kind of. I mean, what are you going to do in a football stadium with a baseball bat? Unbelievable that this is going on, and it's still going on. So Celtic fans go to Ibrox for the first time in ages, and this is what's happening. And you look at the Buckfast bottle, and listen, I called this out the last time, Kev. We're shambolic as a nation in dealing with this situation, right? Because there's a bottle of Buckfast there that's obviously been round the lips of the person drinking it, and the DNA is all over the bottle, and there's fingerprints on glass, and it's easy to get a fingerprint off glass. So what do we have in place? What is the process if that happens? I'll tell you what, we'll just get a random Rangers sub, right, to hang about on the touchline and then run onto the park and then grab the bottle, absolutely contaminating any DNA evidence on the outside of that bottle, and just dispose of it. It's fine. Just dispose of it. And then we'll hopefully capture it on CCTV. And if we don't, we can't get the person responsible. Kev, it's a shambles, mate. Because all it takes is for that to hit somebody off the skull. And, there's going to be like far-reaching consequences. That's one element of yesterday's hatefest, Kev, that I want to focus on first. It needs dealt with. It needs called out, and I think Brendan's been brilliant at calling out some of this stuff. He was the guy that called out the refereeing at Tynecastle, and things have changed since then. There's no doubt about it. Crawford Allen has moved on. We've got Willie Collins. Things are changing. We've got Andrew Dallas making correct VAR decisions. Anybody who doubts that there's been changes, right? And it's Brendan Rodgers again, who's the guy who's put himself out there, Kev. He's calling out the missiles. It's constant, and something needs done about it.
It's constant. I mean, that was the first thing I says. I remember we've had that conversation before. As soon as that bottle appeared on the pitch, the game should have been stopped. It should have been the police that picked it up, and that's it. But no, obviously the Rangers stuff takes an opportune moment to run on and take it off. Probably thinking he's doing the right thing. Probably thinking that he is doing the right thing. I mean, I've said for a wee while this incarnation of Rangers that the lunatics have taken over the asylum, and the lunatics are on the grass, as Pink Floyd once says as well. And that's what happens when you put fans at the top of the marble staircase. And I mean, they got us. I mean, we're not allowed in the Broom Loan anymore because they didn't like us in there because we wanted to sell it for season tickets. No, the ultras didn't like getting moved. I'm not a big lover of the way that sometimes our club deals with our ultras. I think sometimes that there's some, but at least they've been banned when things have went pear-shaped and they've done something that they didn't like. But they facilitated their ultras this season by putting them behind the goals. But that's what happens when, as I say, you've got right Rangers men at the top of the marble staircase, and they want to and they want to appease a fan base because basically they need the money because the club is losing money hand over foot. It's no surprise. It needs called out. There probably needs a stand to get closed at one point or a section to be closed. But will it happen? Who knows? Because they seem to be quite quick with their statements now. It's almost as if they're desperate to make themselves look like they're a normal club for some reason to some outside investors who are maybe looking in.
Kev, you've hit the nail on the head because when you watch it, you imagine watching this for the first time as a football fan and the Rangers players run onto the park pre-match. We'll get to the simply the best and the fact that we now own that. But the Rangers players run onto the park wearing the orange, the garish orange pre-match jacket or whatever you want to call it. And then you've got Liam Kelly running about looking like an Egypt in all orange, something that McGregor loved. That's the club feeding into it, Kev, like you say, from the very, very top. It's got nothing to do with a collection of decent Dutch players under Dick Advocaat. Come on, spare me the nonsense. We know why that's happening, right? And they're feeding into it, they're empowering it. And then what happens is, with regards to tifos, because it takes so long for these things to be organised. There needs to be, a club and ultra agreement in place, Quinny. I mean, it's sitting there prior to kick-off. Then you see it. Then you see the tifo and you think to yourself, right, how else can this be interpreted? How on earth can you interpret this any other way than it being something that would be akin to hate speech? It's a threatening tifo. Now, remove the word rebel, replace it with any other minority group on the planet, and that's a hate crime, right? It is. Simple as that. Just remove that word rebel. But because it's us, because it's Celtic, and because they have, as I say, normalised it, it's normal now for Rangers to bounce about. They've adopted orange as one of their colours. It's normal for them to throw bottles at our players or staff members or fans. That's all right. Because you know what? They've been given the freedom to do it, Quinny. So they'll continue to do it. And as Kev says, that stuff about statements, that's just to try and protect their own investment at this moment in time that they're trying their best to move on. Quinny, I mean, called out by Brendan Rodgers. It won't be called out by John Swinney, First Minister of Scotland, who was only too keen to call out Kneecap, who feature on Kev's T-shirt today in relation to their appearance at Transmit. What's the difference between one type of hate speech against another? There is no difference, is there?
No, I think their tifo is like sorely let them down on this one, because like if you look at the thing again, like number one, it's pretty shit because shoddy is what I should say, because like behind the graphic they're all just holding like a wee ticker tape thing. It's not like a big ensemble kind of thing they've built. It's just like pass the plastic bags out and then stretch this mad painting that they've put together or whatever. And the thing about it that's let them down so hard is, of course, everything that you've mentioned there in terms of the hate element of it all, which is the real kind of, it's the real sharp point of all this, of course. But really, when you look at tifos and you look at fan culture, ultra culture, it's to reflect what the football club, what the game, what the community that the club is or whatever is supposed to represent. And when you look all across European and world football, there is plenty of like fiery derbies out there, you know what I mean? And the tifos in the big derby matches or in meaningful games or whatever, there's tons of them that go viral. They're very well put together. And none of them come anywhere close to touching on the buttons that Rangers one is supposed to touch on, you know, for all the other stuff that goes around the world and all the rest of it. Fan culture, tifos and all the rest of it, it's meant to display like you either maybe get a bit of like your own like imagery or your own kind of culture up front and center there for like the fan group or the club or whatever, or you normally kind of hark back to, you know, like memorable things. Like some of the great Celtic ones are like, you know, the little kid wanting to see the Lisbon Lions, and you know, that's like that's like a thing Celtic fans all identify with. That's something that they're holding out as something that they all identify with, that they all are like, you know, in unison as such. And it's like it's a dominant stand that's taking it up. The club, like you say, must have been aware of what was getting brought into the stadium when it was some sort of preview and approval and all the rest of it. And it's not just the fact that like of everything it does, but it's the kind of the domino effect of by association. It wraps them all in with it, you know. And for rightly or wrongly, that's the way it is, because that's the way, again, they want to treat us when it's any sort of Celtic-based thing. It's like, you know, it's, you know, everyone's tarred with the same brush, and that for them is like a big step down, you know, a road of low standards, let's say, just to kind of try and keep it succinct.
Yeah, no, but Quinny, I think yourself and Kev speak very balanced about this, as I try to as well, but it's so frustrating. And I think as a football fan, you think to yourself, what can you do about it? Well, you can put pressure on your club. You can put pressure on your board to do something about it. Brendan's called out the bottles. Also, the songs of hate. Nobody ever mentions that. No one ever mentions that.
Want to know something, Paul? I didn't notice it yesterday because it's that normalised.
That's what I mean, mate. That's what I mean.
Like I'm going, yeah. Well, so what?
It happens.
Not normalised.
Yeah. Within 20 seconds, within 20 seconds yesterday, they started the song.
They sung a song yesterday I haven't heard probably since the mid-90s. And that was the one that you're talking about after 20 seconds. Mm-hmm. The No Pope at Rome. I haven't heard that sung at Ibrox or at any games that I've watched at them for years and years. And obviously that's a pointed barb as well. That's topical for them, and they probably thought they were being funny.
Yeah, absolutely. Andy Lee, We're going to talk about everything, absolutely every aspect of yesterday's game.
I was just going to say on that, I found it I had a wee chuckle to myself seeing the players in the tunnel before the game, because I've had to totally redecorate the tunnel, obviously. So I was like, oh, it's looking quite new in there. Why did they do that again? Why did they need to redecorate everywhere?
I mean,
exactly.
I hope they never used the same boy that painted that tifo. That would have been an awful mess if they would have got him.
Are world renowned for being really, really rubbish. But again, on you go, mate.
Want to know something, right? The tifo, right? It was May the 4th yesterday, and this take aim at Rebel Scum. I went like, oh, that's a bit a Star Wars reference, and that's Yaya Binks holding a big gun. But obviously, when I was doing the stuff for the band, I done like a wee promo video for the song that we've got called Blackburn, which calls Graham Souness. I'll come on to the Graham Souness bit after that. So I was looking for images of Souness, and I got images of him with Margaret Thatcher and like other sort of ne'er-do-wells. So when I saw that, I knew I did know it was Souness, because I have seen that picture plenty of times. So Graham Souness, right? So we've got a song. We've got a song, and we basically call Graham. It's called Blackburn. It's about us beating Blackburn in the run to Seville. And towards the end of it, we call Graham Souness a horse's arse, and we repeat it numerous times for the last minute.
Quite poetic.
On the outro, right? We repeat it quite a lot on the outro, and because at the time, that's what what's happening to Quinny there.
I don't know. I quite like the look at it though. It's taking me back. I like that.
Yes, it is. Aye, we'll get the test card next.
We'll get the test card next. Camera's overheated. That's all.
So where am I going with this? I can't actually remember where I'm meant to be going with this.
Sorry.
So,
you want the entire crowd to sing along to your song.
So Celtic fans did have a song with Graham Souness. Souness, you're a horse's arse. If anybody that went to see Jim's play, there's another song that we used to sing about Graham Souness is in that play, and a wee bit. But anyway, what I'm getting to say is words have consequences, right? If we get to the kneecap thing, right? So I was listening to that song the other night. How sad am I listening to my own songs in my kitchen at 1 o'clock in the morning after?
No, that's not sad, mate. That's not sad, but you were filming them and sending them to the WhatsApp group.
No, that's sad. That's sad, right? And Kneecap have came out and apologised for some of the things that they've said, and they're quite rightly. None of the politicians that they've called out have came out and apologised for supporting genocide in Palestine. None of them will do it, none of them will. But they've been made out to be the bad guys. And I got me thinking, it's the words that you say as an artist have consequences, right? So because of that song where I say Graham Souness is a horse's arse, sorry for swearing, Paul, but I know it's a family show, I want to apologise to any horses that are offended.
I was wondering where that was going there, Kev. But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right to apologise to any horses that may be offended by your lyrics. Absolutely. Now, Andy Lee, yeah, there was maybe a wee bit. I had never seen the picture. I've got to confess, I'd never seen that picture of Souness at the World Cup.
It's used on quite a lot of the stauncher Twitter handles.
Right, that's probably why. I mean, it could have been Bob Carroll's. It doesn't matter. The message is the same, right? And the message is one of hate. Because I know that some people looked at it and thought it was somebody else, but that's just the way it is, Andy. Yeah, the tifo was bang out of order, but it's definitely the Souness photo from the World Cup. There's a wee bit of debate, I think, going on in whether it was Michael Stone or Graham Souness, but yeah, it was Souness. I've seen the image since. I've seen it posted all over the socials, etc. But the message was pretty clear, and it was one of absolute unadulterated hate. We need a Bruni type player. I want to bring this up, lads, right? Because 2 seasons ago, in fact, 3 seasons ago, when we were going into the games against Real Madrid, right? Alan Morrison was on Acsom, and we were talking about what was missing from the midfield. And he said that we need a player who was a physical player, because he had looked at all the opponents we were going to face, and he was like, we're not going to be able to deal with that midfield. We're not going to be able to deal with that midfield. So we've been talking about this for a while now. And the go-to thing is you go for somebody who's maybe perceived as being a bit of a hard man. Now, Bruni had a lot of football in him, absolutely. A Bruni-type player in our team now to give us some strength in the middle of the park says love it. And I don't disagree with that. But you've got to ask yourself what we already have at the football club. And I'm going to come to you with this one, Quinny. So I had this in my mind yesterday because I do think when you're more or less, I loathe to use the word bullied, but when, say, you're being dominated, which we have been this season, by a player like Nico Raskin, right? And as I say, I don't like him, but I can concede that he's a decent footballer. He is. And yesterday there was a moment where he shrugged off two pretty tough tackles in the same movement. He eventually gets the free kick for it. One of them was Callum McGregor, one of them was Greg Taylor. And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, he's not the big physical kind of player. Yet he's still dominating guys like Callum McGregor. He's still dominating guys like Greg Taylor. And I know there was a wee coming together between him and Callum again. They obviously don't like each other, and that's fine. But I want somebody to absolutely dominate that space, Quinny. And I'm looking at our midfielders. Rio Tati is a playmaker, and he came into a really good game again yesterday. Don't think he was brilliant in the first half, came into a brilliant second half. Then you've got Callum McGregor, who's the leader. You're never going to argue what he has achieved as a captain of Celtic Football Club. Astonishing player. But he's not that player. He's not that player that we're talking about and the player that Lovett's brought up. And then you're looking at Luke McCowan. There's a wee bit of needle about McCowan, but I don't think it's a natural thing. It's a will to win. You then look at Bernardo, who again came on yesterday and I thought played really, really well. And he can dig in and all this, but I don't think he's the physical presence we're talking about. Engels, people are going to disagree with Engels lovers and all that until, he starts to boss Champions League games in this way, I think. He has got the physical attributes for it, Quinny, but I don't think he's doing it yet. I really don't. I mean, we lauded him for knocking somebody off the park against Dundee United, for example. But I've not seen enough of him absolutely physically bossing a midfield. Although I think physically, he's the only guy that's got the attributes to do it. That is something that we are missing. I don't think it's just an old school cliche. We are still missing that, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we're definitely missing a bit more, bite, a bit more muscle in the team somewhere. And I'm not convinced Engels is kind of got that much in him in that sense, because like I'm a big fan of what he does do on the ball and how he plays, and especially games that we like yesterday we did have 60% possession. Games we dominate the ball. He's normally very good at linking up the play. He's really good at slicing some balls through. He's doing that more and more as weeks are going on. But it feels like when it is Engels, Hatate and McGregor in a tougher match, and I mean like the tougher matches we play, the derbies, and then like the top end European opponents, like they are susceptible to being ran over, in terms of like strength, maybe determination is a good word to use as well. But I found it quite interesting that when Bernardo did come on, he was the deeper of the three for large parts of the minutes he got, certainly. And we maybe seen McGregor be a wee bit more box to box when that move happened, because the game was still in the balance. I think Bernardo's the closest one we have to it in terms of being able to do that, because Bernardo had to look at the stats for my breakdown that'll be out later today. But like Bernardo, like defensively in the short time he had, very much outperformed Engels in terms of duels and tackles and all that kind of stuff. But it's clearly something we're missing. Part of the thing I worry about is that Rodgers has signed Engels on the profile he's got, and McCowan the same. And when you look at the three that started, they are all quite similar in a lot of ways. And it feels like if this is the profile or the kind of prototype of the guy that he is going to try and bring in again in the summer, it might be another one of these. Like we've got a Swiss Army knife midfielder rather than an actual specialist in one of the roles. And I think like for the top end games, the games that really make the difference, because although we've got such a big gap in the league and all the rest of it, it doesn't take a big change of circumstances before the derby matches are very important very quickly, and not having the ability to, no matter what the situation is, ride the storm, deal with it, get the job done. That will be something we'll be frustrated with in the future, So it's something that the part of the problem is, but is not guaranteeing, but what do you tell the guy they're going to get for minutes and opportunities on the pitch? Because they'll look at the three midfields that's there and go, well, I'm different to all of them. When am I going to play? Oh, I'm going to play in the tough games. How many of them a year are the meaningless games? And, it can maybe is a hard to, and that's maybe a bit of a hard sell perhaps, unless it's like a prospect type guy who would accept that and, be happy to develop. So I think it's 100% something that should be on the shopping list for this summer, because you just get a lot more out of everyone else. Like we've seen when Engels did play that role in the derby match before this one, he went with McCowan and Hatate left and right of him. I could easily see after a transfer window that somebody like it could be like Hatate and McGregor ahead of someone else more centrally, depending on who you bring in there. but then that puts Engels out the picture all of a sudden, and he's obviously the record transfer, the guy we've invested a lot of time into this season. He's clearly developed. I think he's a really good player, like I've mentioned already, but he's doesn't really fix any problems that we had before we bought him. You know, like that's kind of maybe a little bit of the thing that goes around him as well, as people don't see he's totally changed the dimension of the team, or he's really righted some wrongs that were been missing or anything like that. So I thought like Bernardo did well, and I think a big part of it was by contrast with Engels. We've seen that a few times from Bernardo, that when he's been trying to jostle for the team with Engels, you get a bit more out of him. So I think he's the closest one we have to that person. I don't think any of them are.
You know, Bernardo is one of the players I've been saying he's the guy I think who'll be more frustrated than anybody with his lack of opportunities. And I don't just mean the amount of appearances that he's had, but, you know, he's not started more than 3 games this season consecutively. And I know he's had a few injuries, but he's a player I really highly regard. I think the 3.5 that we paid for him will come back, and it will look like an absolute steal in the years to come. I really believe that with Paulo Bernardo. He's a tremendous midfielder, and he made a really telling contribution yesterday. There's 2 other things I want to talk about. Kev, you mentioned the wee flick of the heel by Ida, where he was able to get the ball out of his feet. It was brilliant. It was like, as you say, you didn't see it at the time. I'm going to, because I'm obviously Andy Engels' biggest fanboy, I'm going to also say that his ghost run across the face of Ida kind of put off the defender as well. I thought that was well played. Can somebody explain to me why the goal was chopped off? Were they trying to claim that Maeda was in front of the goalie? And like the Bayern Munich goal, remember Ida in front of the Bayern Munich goalie? Was that what they were trying to claim? Is that what it was, Quinny? Aye, because I was looking at that thinking, you are desperate to chop this goal off. It goes to VAR, and obviously, and quite rightly, it stood. You know, there's one other guy I want to talk about, and you might be surprised with this, Kev. I'm going to throw it at you first. Is Johnny Kenny. Now, I've more or less kind of thought to myself, nah, you know, he's had his chance. It's not going to work. He comes over as a proper goal scorer from Sligo Rovers, right? And he comes over here. It doesn't work out. We try to lure him out to Queen's Park. That doesn't happen. He goes back to Ireland. He builds his confidence back up. He's obviously physically built up as well. And he came on yesterday, and I'm thinking he made a real telling contribution in his wee cameo. And in the very last kick of the ball, actually, Maeda, maybe he should have burst the net, but I'll tell you something, if he squares that ball, Quinny, you know, we're looking at, I said Quinny is the hero. Kenny is the hero of the hour if he just squares that ball. And the young guy was frustrated as hell when he never squared it. Kev, I thought Johnny Kenny done really well.
He did, aye. If we go back to the point, we'll talk about Johnny Kenny, but if we go back to your midfield point, I've been saying, maybe not a Scott Brown type, but we need more physicality in there. We need to, you have a look at the modern midfield, you have a look at Liverpool midfields and Newcastle's midfield. Every one of them can do the 3 jobs in that 3. I do think that we'll maybe see a change of shape next season, and it'll be interesting to see what Rangers manager comes in. If it is Gerrard, he's not going to change much more than what Clement did, because when you look what he did, his teams were set up virtually the exact same. They flooded the midfield in the press in those areas. But in that midfield, with Engels, there is a player there, but I don't know what type of player he is yet. And I think that's mainly to do with the role that he's asked to play in that Celtic side. I'm still not on the fence. There is a player there. He's only 21. I'm going to give him a wee bit of time, but I do not know what type of player he actually is. So I want to see more physicality in there. I mean, the name that I was given last night was Josh Brownhill for Burnley, as possibly will be announced soon on a pre-contract. He scored 18 goals for Burnley in the Championship. So if we're going to get him, then you're obviously saying that's a direct replacement for Atai, like the role that he plays. But again, the Championship is a tough slog, and you've got to be quite physical to play in there. So I would like to see us signing midfielders that can do everything. As Quinny calls them, your Swiss Army knife midfielders, who it doesn't matter if one of them's missing, they can sit, they can break forward, and that I think that's what we're missing. With regards to Kenny, I thought he was getting his Johnny Hayes moment. I really did think he was getting his Johnny Hayes moment as Dyson burst through. But then Dyson sort of run out of steam, which is no surprise considering he had been in Japan all week. and he had only got back the early hours of Saturday morning, and he trained on Saturday. So that was quite strange that Brendan didn't mention that on Friday, just as he was missing for training. Didn't he say he was in Japan? And there was something my daughter brought up to me as well. Seemingly, Bernardo was in Paris on Friday, Saturday as well. Because he was posting pictures on his Instagram with him and his girlfriend.
Right. So Brendan's
is he just getting the team random days off?
A bit of leeway, yeah.
A bit of leeway here and there,
Yeah.
So it was interesting to hear Brendan saying that about Dyson, that he'd only returned, and maybe that he didn't play well. So if he's just a long haul flight, he does struggle sometimes when he returns for international duty with the length of the flights. Maybe that's why he didn't get put through the middle, Paul. Maybe that's why they didn't have a look at that, because the physical access. But I like Kenny. He came on and got booked. When we were bringing on
Schlupp, bad booking, by the way, I thought. I didn't know the booking was. Yeah.
But I really wanted something to kick us into gear, and sometimes somebody coming on and flattening somebody does that. Yeah. Like you were having a look at a point, and I was just going, Tony, just go and flatten somebody. Just go and do something like to try and kick us into life. And when he was bringing on Big Schlupp, I says to my dad, I was sitting watching it with him, I says, I hope Brendan's telling him, you're never going to play in a Celtic Rangers game, man. Go and do something. Just bring us back into this game. Go and flatten somebody. Just make sure that you remember this. But obviously, he didn't really. First thing he done was miss a header. And Sinasalo had me. With Kenny, he's got a bit of pace. I like the bit of pace. He's got a wee bit of confidence about him. You remember when he came on at Ross County as well? He buzzed about and he nearly had that chance. Again, I don't know if he's got a future with us. That's up to Brendan. But
do you give him a start? Do you give him a start between now and the Scottish Cup final, just to make sure he's firing on all cylinders?
Well, there's got to be a striker spot up for grabs. There has got to be a striker spot up for grabs with Jota's injury. So you've got to have a look at, we'll bring in another winger. Dyson is probably going to be seen as a striker. So there is a striker spot there. I think we would have brought in another winger anyway, but you've got to. I think the squad's creaking a wee bit, and we'll see a lot of managing in the squad. We've already been told Cameron Carter-Vickers is not going to be seen. Alistair Johnson's getting managed as well, and you'll probably see quite a few other players getting managed as well. So it'll be interesting to see if Johnny Kenny gets maybe half an hour, 60 minutes in games and that.
I'd like to see it. I would like to see it. Yeah, I think he had Rangers players on their backsides twice. Once he got penalised for the other one, he got the throw in. So I just think maybe upper body's been working on that. Everybody in Ireland says exactly the same. Kev, he's got pace to burn.
See with Engels as well. I would like him to have a Kieran Tierney transformation. I remember Tierney was that scrawny wee boy at the end of that season. And when Rodgers appeared, he was built. He was a wee barrel. I wonder if that will happen with Engels.
I think that was the point I was making, and that there's a potential for that to happen, Kev. There's still that development.
He's young enough for that to actually happen.
Yeah, get him on his spinach. Absolutely. Listen, that's been great. And by the way, well done, Quinny, for getting your voice back after yesterday, because you were struggling at full time, mate. You were absolutely struggling. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We were with Chris Sutton on Friday, Lubo Maracic on Saturday, and then down at Barazat Design on Sunday. I would have stayed for the Sunday Soul sessions at Hatton Midbad, but I just wanted to get up the road after that. Thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. What we're up to next? Well, we are going to be well in Stubbs and Tosh McKinley. Tickets are going well for that one. 31st of May, ticket link underneath the video. All that's left for me to say is, once again, thanks every one of you for getting involved. Give us a big thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and thank you to Kev Graham and to the mighty Quinn for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.